Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I just kind of ran into an issue. I was printing my C-3PO legs, the lower legs, and the knees in particular. And don't know if you can tell in the perspective of this camera, what I was doing was I was doing freeform deformation on the whole lower part of the leg. I had to like make the calf part wider and the whole knee to ankle part a little shorter. I was just moving things around, and at some point I must have grabbed one of the points and distorted the disc, the knee disc. Okay, so if you take a look at like a perfectly round one and I put it on top, you can see the gold one, it's like slightly sort of egg shaped, right? It's just like a little bit off. And that can kind of cause issues with the top of the thigh moving on it, and it just also doesn't look like a circle. So I don't know what happened, but one side kind of ended up a little bit worse than the other. And so in thinking about it, how was I going to fix this? Should I reprint it or whatever? I mean, it took like, I think, a day and a half. Especially, I wasn't sure if this part of the ring would print okay without supports. So I added supports like all the way on this side and supporting this back part a little bit. And so, yeah, it took like a day and a half to print, which is not an insignificant amount of time. And so to try to remedy, I just thought, well, I can always reprint it. I can fix it. I just thought, well, let me just try something here. And what I did was I actually cut away, like if you look at it straight on, I basically cut away the entire disc. Okay. And so that's just completely open on that side, and it's basically flush cut with this curvature. And then what I did was I modeled two discs. Let me just move this out of the way. I modeled the outer disc. Okay, so the advantage of that is that if you print it flat on the bed like this, you'll get like perfect concentric lines, and it's going to be way easier to sand. You're not printing it vertically. You don't have print lines going this way. It's just print lines going around like this. So it's very easy to finish. And then what I did was for this particular side, this would be like the inside of the thigh, not the outside, but the inside of the knee, sorry, I made a recess for a 1/4-20 nut. And then I modeled this part of the disc, which you can see there's a nut and there's a bolt there. And what I did was, I don't know if you can quite make it out from this angle, but I sort of modeled, again, just sort of engineering it, reverse engineering it from this, knee, which I made fit my body, this sort of like ledge here, and there's kind of like a pocket corner. And what happens is it fits perfectly in there like that. Okay. Now I think if I glue that on there and then do a bit of, filament welding, using a soldering iron along that inner seam, and if I use solvent, like basically solvent weld the pieces together, it's not going to come apart. It's going to be very strong. Okay. And so that would go on the inside, and then I would just glue this part of the disc on the outside, and you can see there's a little hexagon void there that would cover the nut. Okay, so for the inside of the knee, it'd be perfectly flush, and this is the exact same thickness as this side, the original side. The advantage of that, I think, is that if the knees were modeled like this, and I tried putting it into a slicer and just, plain cutting it to see if it fit, and it ended up cutting off a little part of the bottom. I'm sure I can put this into like mesh mixer or something and drop a cylinder in here and boolean it out, but like pretend that side's not there. This would be, I think, faster to print, right? I mean, it would probably be less than a day to print this because you don't have the full circle, you don't have all the detail, and you don't have all the support material. And then that way, this could just be glued on. So if this was for the inside of the knee, and then this would be a sort of an integrated nut inside there, and it would have this 1/4-20 bolt, which goes through the flange of the thigh that would allow it to pivot. On the other side, on the opposite side, I modeled one of these that's just printing right now, where it just has a through hole all the way through for the knee piston, like that, and then there'd be a hole. There was just one hole there, which would align with a hole that I'm going to tap here, so that when you bolt this on, it would be pointing downwards, right? It would be perfectly facing the direction it needs to be. Maybe like I slotted the hole a little bit just so there's a little bit of play if I needed to adjust it, but I want to give this a try just before I glued it all down, but I think this is going to work. I think it's going to work fine. I think it's going to be strong enough. I also just think that maybe just from an engineering perspective, it's going to be easier to print. I think it's going to be structurally strong enough. And I think it's just an easier way for the parts to go together rather than just trying to print it all in one piece. But who knows? Maybe, you know, I can talk to Jesse and maybe see if that's an option that could be offered, or maybe, you know, he'll allow me to make like a modification on this. Just if people want to try it this way, this might just be a different way to do it. Not necessarily resolve, you know, my oval knee problem, but more so it's just easier to print this way, right? And you know, if you, in terms of like the total print time, it might be slightly reduced because you don't have to do print material or support material, and also you're printing flat. And then also if you have more than one printer, you know, if you got a smaller printer, if you got a big printer for big parts, smaller printer for smaller parts, you can print these pieces on a smaller printer. They'll just print much faster, right? So you're kind of like doing two things at the same time, multitasking a little bit. So, all right, so here's this one where I've glued on that side disc. Just use some methylene chloride, which is my favorite way of gluing PLA, PLA+, PETG, works on ABS, works on ASA. Basically, you sand both surfaces, and then I just use a brush or a little needle syringe, run it down the seam, and it basically solvent welds the material together. So I do it on both sides, and it's super solid. It is pretty rock solid, and I haven't even done the soldering, sort of soldering that inner seam, and it seems to work pretty good. So I mean, I don't know, I just think that that's kind of another option, just from like an engineering or design standpoint. I always think it's easier to print details like this, you know, if you can cut a model in half before you put it on your print bed, your FDM printing, and it just makes things a lot easier. And you know, the print lines are not going this way, so there's very little chance of like the print, you know, or this knee like ever snapping or something like that, right? And plus you've got two pieces, because I split it and joined the two pieces together. It's really solid in there. You can see I did just a quick sand of the surface, like 5 seconds of just going like that, and you know, it just smooths out way easier than trying to get print lines off like a vertical print, or like even this side, right? I'm still trying to peel the supports off this side. So anyways, I hope that helps you out. Again, just another option, not saying it has to be done this way. This was more of a problem-solving experiment to see if I could salvage this knee and not have to reprint it again. I am going to be printing another right leg anyway, so that I can have an all gold leg, and so I can have a silver leg as well. But anyways, check it out, you decide. Hope that helps you out. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in.